Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1929. A boy is sitting in the back of his mother's beauty salon. He is 11 years old. He is supposed to be doing homework. He is not doing homework. He is watching the men. They come in every week for manicures, for the attention, for the way his mother makes their hands look like they have never worked a day in their lives, which they have not. Not the kind of work his mother does, anyway. These men are different from everyone else in the neighborhood. They dress in colors nobody else can afford. They wear gold on their fingers and diamonds on their wrists. They drive cars that look like they belong in a different city. And when they walk through the door, the whole salon goes quiet. Not out of fear, out of respect, out of envy, out of something the boy cannot name yet, but can already feel in his chest. He wants to be them. He does not know it yet, but he will get his wish. He is going to become the most famous one of them all. He is going to run every major city in the Midwest for 25 years. Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, Indianapolis, 5 cities at once. Over 400 women working for him at different points, making more money in a week than most men in his neighborhood will see in a year. More than the factory workers, more than the shop owners. At his peak, more than some of the men moving product on those same streets. A man who never touched the product trade, making more money than the men who did. Off charm, off psychology, off a game that most people do not even believe is real until they see the numbers. But here is what the money does not tell you. He is going to lose all of it. Every dollar, every car, every woman. Prison is going to take chunks of his life over and over, and each time he comes out, the game will be harder, and the men around him will be younger and more ruthless. The product is going to get its hooks into him and pull him down in a way no rival ever could. And by his early 40s, the most feared man in the Midwest is going to be broke, alone, and too old to compete. And then, when it is all over, he is going to sit down at a kitchen table and do the one thing none of those men in his mother's salon ever did. He is going to write it all down. Every rule, every trick, every cold night and every colder morning, everything the life actually is, behind the gold and the cars and the women. And the book he writes is going to sell 6 million copies. It is going to be translated into 9 languages. Half the biggest rappers in America are going to name themselves after him. An entire genre of music is going to be built on his words, and he is never going to see a single dollar from any of it. The boy in the back of the beauty salon does not know any of this yet. He is 11. He is watching the men, and he is dreaming. This is that story. Chicago, 1918. The Great Migration is pulling black families north by the hundreds of thousands, out of Tennessee, out of Mississippi, out of Alabama, into the factories and the stockyards and the slaughterhouses of the industrial North. Robert Lee Maupin is born on August the 4th, 1918, into a family that has just made that journey. His parents came from Nashville to Chicago's Black Belt, the dense, segregated corridor on the south side where the city put its black residents and told them to make the best of it. His father leaves early, just disappears. And his mother, a woman Robert will praise for the rest of his life for not abandoning him too, does the only thing she can. She works. She opens a beauty salon. She moves the family to Milwaukee, where she marries a man named Henry Upshaw, a kind, hard-working man who treats Robert well. For a few years, the boy has stability, a stepfather, a home, a mother with a business, and then the stepfather cheats. Robert's mother catches up Shaw with another woman. The marriage shatters. They move again, this time to Rockford, Illinois, where his mother marries a second man, a gambler named Steve Beck. The name Beck is the one Robert will later take as his own when he leaves the game for good. But here is the detail that plants everything that comes after. His mother's beauty salon. In every city they live in, Mary Beck runs a salon, and in every salon the same men walk through the door. Pimps. They come in for manicures, for haircuts, for the attention of a woman who knows how to make a man look polished. And young Robert, sitting in the back of the shop, watches them. Every time. He watches the way they walk, the way they talk, the way every person in the room shifts when they enter. The gold, the diamonds, the suits that cost more than his mother's monthly rent. The cars parked outside that look like they belong in a different city, a different life, a different universe than the one he is living in. He is mesmerized. His word, not mine. He will use that word decades later in his book, describing the exact moment the dream took root. They seemed so glamorous and so worldly and so polished and sophisticated. So this is what molded my thinking, and I wanted to be a pimp. I used to just dream about being a pimp and having all those women giving me money. A boy in the back of a beauty salon, watching men his mother serves, dreaming about becoming them. His mother wants something else for him entirely. She saves enough to send him to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, one of the most prestigious black colleges in the country. He attends. He is there at the same time as Ralph Ellison, the man who will write Invisible Man. Two young black men at the same school, in the same years, and both of them will go on to write books that change American literature, but in completely different directions. Robert does not finish Tuskegee. He drops out, goes back to the south side of Chicago, and at 18 years old, he enters the life. He starts pimping. A hustler named Party Time shows him the basics. Then a man named Sweet Jones, an older pimp with a reputation, teaches him the real rules. In his book, Robert quotes Sweet Jones directly. A good pimp is always alone. You gotta always be a puzzle, a mystery to them. That is how you hold a woman. Robert is smart. He is 6'2". He is calm in a way that unsettles people. The kind of calm that does not break under pressure, does not flinch when things go wrong, does not react when a normal man would explode. His friends on the street start calling him Slim because he is thin, and then they add the word that defines his whole personality. Iceberg, cold, still, unmovable. A man who shows nothing on the surface while the machinery underneath runs at full speed. Iceberg Slim. For the next 25 years, that name moves through the Midwest like a rumor you cannot confirm but cannot ignore. Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, Indianapolis. Iceberg. Slim operates in every major black city in the region, running women, learning the game, perfecting a system built on psychology, control, and the kind of emotional discipline most men do not have. And here is what made him different from every other man in the life. He was educated, not street educated, actually educated. Tuskegee. He could read, he could write, he could think in a way that most men in his position could not. And he used that mind not to get out of the game, but to get deeper into it. He studied his women the way a psychologist studies patients. He learned what made them stay, what made them leave, what words to use, what silences to hold, what moments of kindness, carefully placed between the cruelty, kept a woman believing that the man who was using her was the only man who understood her. It was cold, it was calculated, and it was, by his own account, the most effective system he ever built. By his own telling, over the course of those 25 years, he managed over 400 women, black and white. He ran them through a system that was, by his own admission, ruthless and manipulative. He does not hide from that in the book. He does not dress it up. He does not ask for sympathy. He tells you exactly what he did, exactly how he did it, and exactly what kind of man you have to become to do it. And then he tells you what it cost him, because the game has a price that does not show up until you have been in it too long to get out clean. The product came first. Iceberg Slim started using to cope with the stress of the life, the paranoia, the constant threat, the knowledge that any night could be the night one of your women leaves, one of your rivals moves, one of the police you have been dodging finally catches up. The product dulled all of that. And then it took over. And then came prison, multiple times, Cook County, Leavenworth, the federal system. He sat in cells and watched younger men take his territory. He came out and rebuilt. He went back in and lost it again. The cycle ran for 2 decades. Every time he got out, the game was a little harder. The men around him were a little younger and a little more willing to cross lines he would not cross, and the women were a little less interested in a man who had been away. And somewhere in his early 40s, sitting in a cell, looking at the walls he had seen too many times, he had the thought that most men in his position never allow themselves to have. I am too old for this. Not too old physically, too old in the game. The younger pimps were more ruthless than he was, more willing to go further. And the women had changed. The world had changed. The rules he had learned from Sweet Jones in the 1940s did not apply the same way in the 1960s. And for the first time in 25 years, Iceberg Slim looked at the life and saw it for what it was. A dead end. He got out. He moved to Los Angeles. He changed his name to Robert Beck, taking the last name of the man his mother had married. He got a job as an insecticide salesman, going door to door, spraying for bugs. The most famous pimp in the Midwest was spraying for cockroaches in Los Angeles. And then something happened that nobody, least of all Robert Beck, expected. He met a woman named Betty Shue. She was white. She was educated. She was not from his world. And she did something no one had ever done for him before. She told him to write it down. All of it. The 25 years, the 400 women, the cells, the hotels, the corners, Sweet Jones, party time, the rules of the game that nobody outside the life had ever heard spoken out loud. Write it down. He sat at his kitchen table in a small apartment in Los Angeles. He had no money, no publisher, no literary agent, no connections to the book world. He had a pen and a stack of paper and 25 years of stories that were burning a hole in his chest. He wrote Pimp, the story of my life. And in 1967, a small publishing house called Holloway House put it out. It did not show up in bookstores, not at first. Holloway House did not have the distribution for that. Instead, the book showed up in the places where the people who needed to read it actually went. Liquor stores, barber shops, street tables, prison commissaries, the corners and the parlors and the waiting rooms of Black America, and it sold. Not the way books normally sell, not through reviews in the New York Times, not through author tours and bookstore signings. The New York Times would not even run an advertisement for Pimp because of the title. The mainstream literary world wanted nothing to do with Robert Beck, but the streets wanted everything to do with him Pimp spread the way news spreads in neighborhoods that do not read newspapers. Hand to hand, word of mouth. A man reads it in a barber shop waiting for a cut, finishes it that night, hands it to his brother the next morning. A woman finds it on a shelf in a liquor store and buys it because the cover looks like a man she knows. An inmate discovers it in the prison library and passes it through the cell block until the spine falls apart. By 1973, 6 years after publication, Pimp had been reprinted 19 times. It had sold nearly 2 million copies. It had been translated into German, French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Jokush, Dutch, Swedish, Finnish, and Greek. A book written by a pimp from the south side of Chicago, published by a tiny house in Los Angeles, rejected by the entire mainstream publishing industry, was being read in 9 languages on 4 continents. By the time Robert Beck died, total sales across all his books had reached 6 million copies. 6 million. He wrote 7 books after Pimp, including Trick Baby, Mama Black Widow, and The Naked Soul of Iceberg Slim. Trick Baby was turned into a film. He gave lectures. He became, for a brief moment, something close to a public intellectual of the underworld, a man who could stand on a stage and explain the streets to an audience that had never walked them. He was called the most influential African-American writer of his time, and that is not street hype. That is literary critics and academics looking at the numbers and the influence and admitting that a pimp from Chicago had outsold almost every black novelist in the country. And here is the part that should make you furious. He never saw the money. Holloway House, the publisher, kept the profits. The arrangement between Beck and Holloway House was, by every account, exploitative from the start. The publisher paid him advances and small royalty checks, but the bulk of the revenue from 6 million books went into Holloway House's pockets, not his. And here is the thing that makes it more than just a bad business deal. Robert Beck understood exploitation. He had practiced it for 25 years. He knew exactly how to take someone's labor and keep the profits. He knew the psychology of control, the methods of manipulation, the art of making someone believe they are getting a fair deal when they are getting taken. He wrote the book on it, literally, and Holloway House did it to him. As one biographer put it, Beck had ironically become the victim of a system of exploitation he had once imposed on others. The publishing house was making massive profits from his work without paying him what he was owed. The game he thought he had left behind had followed him into the legitimate world and caught him from a direction he never expected. His final years were hard. His health deteriorated. Diabetes. He became increasingly reclusive. The man who had once commanded rooms, who had once walked into any club in Chicago or Milwaukee and owned it, spent his last years in a small apartment in Los Angeles, watching his influence grow while his bank account shrank. He married a woman named Diane Millman Beck in 1982. She would later describe those years as plagued by financial worries. The bills were constant. The royalty checks were not. And outside his apartment, the world he had built with his words was exploding. Ice-T was becoming one of the biggest rappers in America, carrying Iceberg Slim's name into every arena and every record store. Ice Cube was rewriting West Coast hip-hop with a voice that owed everything to the cold, unflinching style Beck had invented on the page. Too Short was selling platinum albums built entirely on the pimp archetype Beck had defined. Snoop Dogg was quoting him, Jay-Z was referencing him, Chris Rock was citing him as an influence, and Robert Beck was watching all of it from a couch in Culver City, wondering how he was going to pay his medical bills. He died on April the 28th, 1992, 73 years old, liver failure, in a hospital in Culver City, California. One day before the Los Angeles riots began. One day, Rodney King, the verdict, the city on fire. The biggest eruption of black rage in a generation, happening miles from the hospital where the man who had spent his entire life documenting Black America's underground had just taken his last breath. He missed it by 24 hours. In 2005, 13 years after his death, Diane Millman Beck and Beck's 3 daughters from his relationship with Betty Shue filed a lawsuit against Holloway House for back payment of royalties. In their suit, they said it plainly. Robert Beck died penniless, the most influential African-American writer of his generation. 6 million copies, 9 languages, 4 continents, Ice-T, Ice Cube, Jay-Z, Snoop, Biggie, Too Short, Chris Rock, the entire Blaxploitation wave, the entire pimp aesthetic in hip-hop, all of it tracing back to one man's kitchen table, and he died without a dollar. But the words did not die with him. In 2012, Ice-T produced a documentary about Iceberg Slim, called it Portrait of a Pimp, directed by Jorge Hinojosa. It premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. Ice-T, Chris Rock, Snoop Dogg, Henry Rollins, Quincy Jones, all on camera, talking about what this one man's book did to their lives and their art. The entire Blaxploitation film wave of the 1970s drew directly from his pages. The Mac, Superfly, Willie Dynamite. Robert J. Poole, the inmate who wrote the Mac's screenplay on prison toilet paper in San Quentin, was reading Pimp when the idea came to him. The most famous Pimp film ever made exists because of a book written by a man who was spraying for cockroaches in Los Angeles when the movie came out. The way rappers talk, the slang, the persona, the cold, streetwise, nothing can touch me voice that defined hip-hop from its first record to its last. That voice comes from one place, one book, one man sitting at a kitchen table who had nothing left but a story and a woman who told him to write it down. Eddie Murphy created a character on Saturday Night Live called Velvet Jones. It was a direct spoof of Iceberg Slim. The character of Alamo in Euphoria was inspired by him. Quentin Tarantino built Drexel Spivey in True Romance on Iceberg Slim's voice. The fingerprints are everywhere, in film, in television, in comedy, in music, in literature, in the way America talks about the streets, and all of it traces back to a boy in the back of a beauty salon in Milwaukee, watching pimps come in for manicures, dreaming about becoming them. He became them for 25 years, and then he became something none of them ever imagined. A writer, the one who told the truth so cold and so complete that the truth itself became a culture. 6 million copies, 9 languages, 4 continents. And the man who wrote them left his family nothing but a lawsuit against the publisher who kept it all. So what do you take from the life of Iceberg Slim? Take the table. A man who spent 25 years in the coldest game in America, sat down at a kitchen table, and did the one thing nobody in his world had ever done. He told the truth. Not the Hollywood version, not the cleaned-up version, the real version. Every ugly detail, every rule, every scar, and the world heard it. 6 million copies heard it. An entire genre of music was built on top of it. 3 of the biggest rappers in history named themselves after the man who wrote it. And the publishing house that printed it kept the money, the way a pimp keeps the money from the women who earn it. The game Robert Beck thought he had left behind followed him to his grave. He pimped for 25 years. He wrote about it for 25 more. And in the end, the only difference between the 2 careers is that in one of them, he was the one getting played.